You're hungry. It's a couple of million years ago, and you are an early human, and you are, once again, chewing. You've been chewing for what feels like forever, because that's just what life is now. Your food is raw, a tough hunk of roots or a stringy piece of raw meat, and getting any actual nourishment out of it means grinding away with your big, powerful jaws for hours, not minutes, hours. In fact, you'll spend a huge chunk of your entire waking life just chewing. And then one day, something happens. Maybe a piece of that food falls near a fire, a wildfire, a lightning strike, something, and it sits there in the heat. And when you finally grab it and take a bite, everything is different. It's soft, it's warm, it practically melts in your mouth. It tastes somehow better. And you eat the whole thing in a fraction of the time, and you feel fuller than you have in days. You have just stumbled onto what might be the single most important thing our species ever did. And here's the twist that's going to reframe your entire idea of dinner. Cooking didn't just change our food. Cooking changed our bodies. It changed our brains. It may be the reason you are smart enough to be watching this right now. This is the story of why humans started cooking their food. And it is, I promise you, a much bigger deal than it sounds. Because when you think about cooking, you probably think about flavor, taste, making things delicious, and sure, that's part of it. But cooking is not fundamentally about taste. Cooking is about energy. It is, in a very real sense, a cheat code, a hack that broke the rules of biology and let our ancestors do something no other animal had ever done. And to understand why, we have to start with a problem. The problem of eating raw. Here's the thing nobody tells you about a raw diet. It is brutally inefficient. Look at our closest living relatives, the great apes. Chimpanzees and gorillas eat mostly raw plants, and as a result, they have to spend an absolutely enormous portion of their day just eating. A gorilla can spend more than half of its waking hours chewing. Think about that. Half your life? Gone. Just to the physical act of chewing tough, raw, low-energy food. Raw food is hard. It's fibrous, it's tough, and your body has to work incredibly hard to break it down and extract the energy from it. Your digestive system is basically running a slow, expensive factory, spending huge amounts of energy just to get energy back out. And a lot of the time, the math barely works. Raw food gives you calories, but extracting those calories costs you calories and time and effort. For most of the animal kingdom, this is just the deal. You are more or less a slave to your stomach, spending your days locked in a constant, grinding effort to feed a body that is never quite satisfied. And raw food has another problem. It can be dangerous. Raw meat can carry parasites and harmful bacteria. Some raw plants contain toxins or are simply indigestible. Eating raw is a gamble every single time. So this is the world our ancestors lived in. Hungry, chewing endlessly, playing a dangerous game with every meal, and spending most of their energy just trying to stay fed. And then they met fire. Now, fire is terrifying. To pretty much every animal on Earth, fire means one thing: run. It's death, it's danger, it's pure destruction. And for a long time, early humans surely felt the same way. But at some point, somewhere, something remarkable happened. Instead of just running from fire, our ancestors started to approach it, to tolerate it, and eventually, to control it. This is one of the great turning points in the story of life on Earth. The moment a creature stopped fearing fire and started using it. We don't know exactly when this happened. Evidence for the controlled use of fire stretches back hundreds of thousands of years, and possibly much further, perhaps even 1 to 2 million years ago. But at some point, our ancestors were not just warming themselves by fire or using it to scare off predators. They were putting food into it, and that changed absolutely everything. So, let's talk about what cooking actually does, because this is the heart of the whole story. When you apply heat to food, you are essentially doing part of the work of digestion before the food ever enters your body. You are pre-digesting it. Cooking breaks down tough fibers in plants. It unravels and unwinds the proteins in meat. It turns hard, resistant starches into soft, easily absorbed energy. In other words, cooking takes food that your body would have to fight to break down, and it does that breaking down for you on the outside using the free energy of the fire instead of the precious energy of your own body. The result is staggering. Cooked food gives you dramatically more usable energy than the same food raw. You get more calories, and you get them far more easily. A cooked meal that takes you 20 minutes to eat and digest might have taken hours of chewing and a full day of digestion in its raw form, while giving you less energy overall. Cooking, quite simply, is a technology for unlocking energy that was previously locked away, inaccessible inside your food. And, on top of that, the heat kills most of the parasites and bacteria that made raw food so dangerous. So cooking made food safer, softer, faster to eat, and vastly more nutritious all at the same time. It is, without exaggeration, one of the greatest hacks in the history of biology. Now, here is where it gets truly mind-blowing, because that extra energy, all those newly unlocked calories, had to go somewhere. And where it went changed what it means to be human. This idea is most famously associated with a scientist named Richard Wrangham, and it's often called the cooking hypothesis. And the argument goes like this: the single most expensive organ in the human body, in terms of energy, is the brain. Your brain is an absolute glutton. It's only about 2% of your body weight, but it devours around 20% of your energy. A big brain is extraordinarily costly to run. For most of evolutionary history, animals simply couldn't afford one because they couldn't get enough surplus energy to feed it. But cooking changed the equation. Suddenly, our ancestors were extracting far more energy from their food far more easily, and that surplus of energy could be used to fuel something that had previously been too expensive to build: a bigger, more powerful, more hungry brain. In this view, cooking is quite literally what allowed the human brain to grow to the incredible size it is today. The fire didn't just cook our food, it fed our minds. And the changes didn't stop at the brain. Look at your own body and you'll see the fingerprints of cooking all over it. Compare yourself to a gorilla. A gorilla has enormous jaws, massive teeth, and a huge gut, all necessary for processing mountains of tough raw plants. Now look at a human. We have small, weak jaws, small teeth, and a surprisingly small gut for our body size. Why? Because we outsourced the hard work of digestion to fire. Once cooking was doing so much of the breaking down for us, we no longer needed giant grinding teeth or a massive, energy-hungry digestive system. So over hundreds of thousands of years, they shrank. Our teeth got smaller. Our jaws got weaker. Our guts got shorter. Our bodies physically redesigned themselves around the assumption that our food would be cooked. Think about how profound that is. Cooking is not just something we do, it is written into our anatomy. We are, biologically, creatures built for cooked food. We became so dependent on it that our bodies stopped being able to handle the alternative efficiently. And then there's the gift of time. Remember the gorilla spending half its life chewing? Well, once our ancestors were eating soft, energy-rich cooked food, they didn't have to do that anymore. Meals that once took hours now took a fraction of the time. And suddenly, for the first time in the history of our lineage, humans had something almost no other animal has ever had in such abundance: free time. Time not spent finding, chewing, and digesting food. And what do you do with all that newfound time and all that newfound brain energy? You start doing the things that make us human. You make better tools. You plan. You explore. You tell stories. You develop complex language. You build relationships and social structures of astonishing complexity. Cooking didn't just feed the body and the brain. It freed up the hours that let human culture itself begin to flourish. In a very real sense, every book, every song, every invention, every conversation you've ever had was made possible because your ancestors figured out how to soften their dinner over a fire. And that leads us to something beautiful, because cooking wasn't just a biological revolution, it was a social one. Think about how cooking works. You don't usually cook one tiny portion for one person over a fire. You build a fire, and that fire becomes a center, a hearth, a place people gather around. Cooking naturally brings people together, into a shared space, around a shared source of warmth and light and food. The campfire, with a meal cooking on it, may be one of the very first social hubs in human history. It's where people sat together, in the dark, warm and fed and talked, where stories were told, where bonds were formed, where a group of individuals became a community. The shared cooked meal is one of the most powerful social rituals we have, and it is ancient almost beyond measure. When you sit down to eat dinner with your family or your friends tonight, you are taking part in a ritual that stretches back to those first fires in the dark. The meal that brings people together is not a modern invention. It is one of the oldest human things there is. But let me give you the other side of this, the part that's a little unsettling. We are now completely dependent on cooking. This is not optional for us anymore. Unlike other animals, humans genuinely struggle to survive and thrive on a fully raw diet. Studies of people who eat entirely raw food often find they struggle to maintain a healthy body weight because we simply can't extract enough energy from raw food to power our demanding bodies and enormous brains. Our biology has been so thoroughly reshaped by hundreds of thousands of years of cooking that we have, in a sense, painted ourselves into a corner. We traded our big guts and powerful jaws for big brains and free time, and there's no going back. We are, in the words of some researchers, obligate cooks. Cooking is not a lifestyle choice for our species. It is a biological necessity. We are as dependent on our external technological stomach, the fire, the cooking pot, the stove, as we are on our own internal one. And there's something a little humbling in that. The most intelligent species on the planet, the one that split the atom and walked on the moon, cannot comfortably survive on the food nature provides without first applying heat to it. Our entire dominance, in a way, rests on a fire. So let's come back to the big question. Why did ancient humans start cooking their food? And the answer, when you put it all together, is genuinely astonishing. They started most likely by accident. A dropped scrap of food near a fire, a curious taste, a discovery that cooked food was softer, safer, and somehow more satisfying. But that small, accidental discovery set off a chain reaction that would reshape our entire species. It unlocked a flood of energy that had been trapped inside our food. That energy fueled a bigger brain and freed us from the endless grind of chewing. That bigger brain and that free time gave us tools, language, culture, and community. And the fire we cooked over became the center of our social world, the place we gathered and bonded and became something more than just a collection of hungry animals. Cooking made us smarter. It made us free. It made us social. In a very real sense, cooking made us human. So the next time you turn on your stove or fire up a grill or even just pop something in the microwave, take a moment to appreciate what you're actually doing. You are performing a version of the single most transformative act in the history of our species. You are doing what your ancestors did around a fire 2 million years ago, an act so powerful it reached into our very bodies and rebuilt them. It shrank our teeth. It grew our minds. It gave us time. It brought us together. That warm bite of cooked food, the one your distant ancestor took for the first time in shock and delight by an accidental fire, started everything. Every thought you've ever had was, in a way, cooked into existence. We didn't just learn to cook our food. Our food and the fire that transformed it is a huge part of what cooked us into being human. And every single time you sit down to a warm meal, you are tasting the very thing that made you who you are.